Howdy, this is Pastor Erik. Gonna share a quick devotion with you on the 30 some odd day of our lockdown, our coronavirus self-quarantining. Over the last few weeks, I've been reading a little bit about the growth of the early church in the first few centuries after Christ ascended. And one of the interesting things I came across was took place from 165 on to about 180 AD. What happened was a plague, this epidemic, swept through the Roman Empire and killed millions of people. Like a third of the empire's population was wiped out by this plague that just ravaged the world. It was probably smallpox is the best guess, but there's no real way to know exactly what it was. It's sort of all conjecture based on symptoms. Anyway, so this smallpox epidemic hits, and the very first thing that the wealthy folks would do is they would flee to their country estates, and they would live somewhere far away from people, and they would self-isolate and hide out. And because they had the resources and they had the opportunity and the option, they were able to escape the worst of it. Now, everybody else was stuck. You would have some folks who would flee cities, but a lot of people had to stay where they were at because they didn't have anywhere to go, and they needed to live, they needed to eat, they needed the things that came along with the city that they were in, and so they were stuck. And these people in these cities, as the virus, as the smallpox spread, if a member of your family suddenly had symptoms of it, they would respond by shoving them out into the street. Because if you were around that person, you would get sick, and there was no hope that you would get better. And so they would stack people out in the roads. And there are accounts of the death toll in these cities being so high that they would have 24-hour caravans of bodies being carried out to be buried. There's one description where the dying in the street, these people who had been put out by their families, rather than risk contracting smallpox, the dying in the streets was like dirt. They were piled upon each other, and they were everywhere. During this time, the church responded in a very different way. Christians, instead of pushing their family members out the door, they would take care of them, and they would feed them, and they would provide basic nursing care. And in a lot of instances, they would go out into the streets and provide basic care to the people who were dying, who were laying out in the gutters and starving to death in some instances, or just ravaged by the illness and dying. And they would go out and they would provide this care. And it was night and day compared to what the pagans at the time were doing. And there's a lot of reasons for that. Ancient pagans believed that when you died, you basically went to the underworld. And that underworld was dark, and it was kind of depressing. There was not a lot of good stuff going on there. There was nothing to look forward to. Whereas the Christians, they would look and they would say, well, I'm bound for reward in heaven because I belong to Jesus. As a follower of Christ, my sins are forgiven. I will be brought up to the heavenly, place, to eternity with God. And that would be where I was heading. And so Christians, they weren't afraid of dying as much. Or even if they were afraid of dying, they would look and say, well, Jesus taught me that I need to care for the poor, and I need to care for the sick, and I need to care for people who are dying. This is my job. This is what Jesus said I had to do. This is what we're about. And so these Christians would go out and they'd take care of people. And the word of this spread, and people would look at the Christians and they'd say, well, they're very different. There's actually a prediction that just basic nursing care in the first century probably saved 75% of the people that received it. And so the impact of this was huge. And a lot of times folks would look at the Christians and they'd say, oh, well, their God must be on their side because they're not dying as much as we are. Or they'd look and say, well, these people are showing compassion. That seems like a better way to live than what I have. And a lot of people converted based on that. They were taking the words of Jesus where he said, look, don't be afraid of anything in this world that can destroy your body. Be afraid of the God that can destroy your body and soul in hell. Like take God seriously, obey, follow. This is the better way to be. God is a bigger deal than what's happening in the world around you, because you're just temporarily here. You're passing through. You're sojourners or just visiting. And like this is still true of Christians today, except like as we're facing this, we need to take this seriously. Like as we're facing this time of coronavirus, of staying home or else, or hey, I don't want to get sick and so I don't want to leave my house. Like this is something that we need to take on as how we look at the world. Paul wrote, I didn't give you a spirit of, or like God didn't give us a spirit of fear. Like we don't have this spirit of fear. We're not called to be afraid of the world around us. We're called to be Christ to the world around us, to serve and to love and to be Jesus. Now, before I go any further, and listen to me very carefully, because I'm not like saying this, I don't want to be misunderstood or misquoted. I am not saying be stupid. I am not saying rush out without a mask, get yourself sick, get your neighbor sick, get your kids sick. I'm not saying that. Like in the same way that, I am not saying, hey, God will protect you, so go play in traffic. God will protect you, so play Russian roulette. No, that's dumb. Like, don't be stupid. Don't throw caution to the wind, and don't use your lack of fear that God calls us to as an excuse to just indulge in your flesh. Like, because there are a lot of people out there who are saying, oh, well, I want to go out to eat again, and that's why I want to go shopping, and that's why I want this thing to end. Don't be that person. Like, look at the world around you and say, how can I serve the people around me? How can I go out and be like the face and the voice and the hands and the embodiment of Jesus to the people around me? How can I show them comfort? How can I show them care? And if you think about it, there's all sorts of examples of this. Right now, there are lines in big cities. There are lines around blocks of people going to get food from food banks. And a lot of food banks are struggling because they don't have enough volunteers to run the place. Like, as believers, we should be charging in and helping distribute food to the needy. We should be identifying neighbors who need help and dropping boxes of food off, secretly, so that they are blessed by what we've done. I'm not saying, we should like bask in the glory of our good works. No, we should serve Jesus now. If you've got a neighbor who's sick or a neighbor who's struggling, like reach out to them and figure out how you can help. If you've got a neighbor who is a shut-in and alone, reach out to them and offer them comfort. Call them, send them text messages, do whatever it is you need to do to show them the love of Jesus. Be Jesus to them. In this time, the thing that we need to be afraid of isn't getting sick. It isn't this world collapsing on us. We need to take that stuff seriously. We can't be stupid about that. And we have to honor governing authorities. And like that is a part of what we're commanded to do by the scriptures. Like we don't just ignore the law or the direction of our governing authorities because we don't want to, because God put those people in charge. Like that's what Peter says it and Paul says it. It's not a small thing in the scriptures. Like we have to take those people seriously. But more so than anything else, we need to be more afraid of losing what we are out of fear. Like, as believers, we need to feed, we need to clothe, we need to heal, we need to minister. We need to be Jesus to the world around us. And this is the time when it needs to happen. Like, when life is easy, it's not a big deal. When everything is normal, it's not hard. And it doesn't matter as much. This is the time when it really matters, when like there is stuff to be done, work to be done, ways to minister. Well, how do I do that? I know folks that are making masks and giving them away. I know folks that are dropping donuts off on people's porches just as a, hey, we love you, be happy. I know folks that are going out and managing the food bank. I know people who go grocery shopping for their neighbors, or people who are giving away things that they have because they know they can help the people around them. Like, find ways to serve and serve. This is when it matters. Not because you're going to earn your way into heaven, but because like acting like Jesus is what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Like, be a follower of Jesus, not so that you're forgiven, not so that you can become, like this God's, perfect little angel, but because this is what God calls us to do. You're forgiven by grace. You won't earn heaven by doing this. Go out and be Jesus to the world. Share grace. Pour out God's love on the people around you. Don't be afraid of what could happen. Don't be stupid. Don't ignore precaution. Instead, take care of the folks who need taken care of. Love the people that need being loved or need loving. Go out and do God's job. Guys, we're all in this together. We're the church doing God's work in this world. Let's go out and do God's work. Let's go out and put wheels and a transmission and an engine into our faith and really do what God has called us to do. Love, minister, make phone calls. There are people committing suicide because they're lonely and depressed. Reach out to them and show them love. There's so many things that we can do. There's so many ways we can give and support. Go out and do it. Be Jesus. And if you need a beginning point, sit down and read Matthew 5, 6, and 7. Read what Jesus called us to do. Read how Jesus called us to live, and then figure out ways to do it. Don't be stupid. Don't be idiotic. Don't be careless, but be Jesus to the world. God bless, guys. We're all in this together. Love you. Let me know what you think. Shoot me a text message. If you need some guidance or whatever, give me a call. I'm here. I will do whatever I can to help you out. Till next time.